This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 28th of November 2019, and I am 2J.
I am Tom.
And I am DM. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. The Standard, the new game plan, the Daily Nation, fresh start for Kenya.
Yes.
And the Star, Uhuru, my 45 tense minutes with Raila.
Oh.
Yes.
Still on BBI,
As expected.
as expected, and
Yes.
will continue to be, so we take them all together.
Yes.
Yep, agreed.
And the headlines are talking about what happened yesterday. And in my view, what happened yesterday, yesterday was explosive. And it was explosive because of this. I think that William RUTO walking out of BOMAS was not a happy man. And he was not happy because he may have felt that he was not treated well by the organizers of this function.
And you know what? I completely agree.
Did you see his body language?
Completely off.
I mean, even look at this. Look,
Yeah.
the president and Raila are very happy. Ruto is holding one side of Raila. He's not showing his teeth, and his one hand, this
Your
right
body
hand,
language
is like
expert.
this. I mean, if this happened to me, I would do the same.
Maybe he didn't feel happiness, but he felt joy.
Explain.
Which is a deeper feeling.
Yeah.
You see, as we were saying yesterday, for a long time there has been anxiety at the William Ruto camp.
Yes.
Because they were thinking that this BBI thing is going to upstage his presidential ambitions.
Yes.
But that did not happen.
Yes.
We are back to regular programming.
Yes.
He can run for presidency
Yes.
as earlier intention.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
he may have felt slighted, or did not have he just didn't have a nice day.
Yeah.
I just
But
feel
in
that
the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
he
I
has
just
a nice
felt,
future.
I felt so bad for him because it's okay. Maybe feeling bad is the wrong word to use, but I just felt like there was a lot of disrespect, and maybe those are the things that we've been hearing throughout this year,
Yeah.
where he goes for occasions and he's treated a certain way. He's not given the respect as the deputy president.
Yes.
Yeah.
People come up to give speeches and they say, "Honorable
Yes.
President Uhuru Kenyatta."
Yes.
They
say Prime Minister. Every time they said Prime Minister, I had a question mark in my head.
Yeah.
Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga.
They
Silence.
say he's prime minister because there's never been another.
There's never been another, true. But
Yeah.
then they never go on to then mention,
But guys,
Honorable Deputy President.
Guys, don't feel sorry for this man. He's a politician with a thick skin, and he's going to.
Let me tell you, William Ruto, I don't feel bad for him because of BBI. I actually think out of this entire report, he's the happiest because now he's the driving position. However, this was like the Oscars, and the person who's hosting the Oscars is Borat. You know Borat? You know Borat is the version.
So the most clownish character
yes.
that
they could find was Borat, and Borat
who is also aligned to
who's aligned to Raila.
I will say that one unrelated insight that came from the whole event was what we have on the Star.
Yeah.
The 45 minutes, when we actually find out how the handshake came to be.
Yes.
That apparently Uhuru and Raila sat in silence for 45 minutes.
Taking tea.
Sipping tea before they could come to their...
Asking how's your family?
I really liked that the president gave that story.
Yeah.
For this reason.
Yeah.
He humanized the handshake.
Yes.
He demonstrated to us that it was a very uncomfortable encounter, which he willingly chose to enter into.
Yes.
For the sake of stability. So
Yeah.
it moved from being a scheme
Which
by
is what
two
we are.
politicians
Exactly.
who came together in order to...
But you know what inspires this kind of headline, in my view? Is
The
the president's speech. If you had him, the man was so convincing, and like in recent weeks when people have been commenting on his social media page, this time round everybody seemed convinced by the president.
Yeah.
His speech was so emotional, and
was fantastic.
And he said, "My heart, the only person who has spoken my heart was the Tanzanian foreign minister." I wish you guys saw that speech. That speech was beautiful, and just to see the history between
Churchill
Kenya
doesn't understand Kiswahili. Was it in Swahili?
No, it's actually
wow.
he tried to do both.
Okay.
So you can just go and watch. You take the English bits.
I'll ask for the subtitles.
Fantastic.
So for the headlines, we do have a 3-part criteria that we use to analyze them for you. We ask, is the headline topical or speculative?
Yeah.
Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And finally, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? I think all the headlines, of course, are topical. None of them today are speculative.
Yes.
Nobody has gone out of their way to make speculation.
Yes.
Groundbreaking.
Yes.
I will say that the Star needs to take a page out of the Standard and the Daily Nation. Keep it short
Keep
and
it short.
sweet. We don't
So,
need essays
all
on
the
our
way
headline.
Yes.
To the bin.
Yeah.
I think that we can judge on the basis of thoughtfulness.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the Standard, once again,
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is
it's very
fantastic.
apt.
Yeah.
I mean, and let me tell you, I have not seen the media this positive in the last recent
I
years.
know. Well done, guys.
These guys are very positive. And let me tell you, I think, you know what? This is a mark of confidence. When you see this kind of headlines, if I'm an international investor, I'm coming in and I'm seeing this kind of headlines, I mean, this, you want to invest in a market with the media.
With a cohesive
with
society,
cohesiveness. Although I still doubt us, we will not, by next week we'll have forgotten it's the first step.
As we always do. Wait, so we've given the winning
So
headline
the winning
to...
headline goes to the Standard. And on to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country.
Yeah.
And just like the headlines, we
Yes.
have a three-part criteria that we use to break them down for you. We ask,
Yeah.
is the cartoon humorous
Yes.
or is it dry?
Yes.
Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally,
Yes.
is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes.
Gosh.
So Ndula here has a drawing, and the drawing is of the BBI report.
Looking like a Bible.
Yes, so I wonder whether it's a desert or plateau or savannah anyway. And the caption there is New Dawn, question mark.
Yeah.
And I think Ndula is asking the right question. Look, let's put ourselves in Raila's and Ruto's shoes. Ruto is going to dig in and want BBI passed as is because he can benefit from it. Raila Odinga would want this to go to the public, and because he knows he may not win in a direct presidential election, he would want an executive premiership because he knows that it's a theater he would want to battle in. Now, I think, guys, in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, politics will be on a new octane. We will have high politics like we have not seen before.
That's true. The political season has come really early.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very extended.
Yes.
I like this Ndula cartoon because it is not typical of Ndula to be very sober. He's usually very humorous. He has a lot of gimmicks.
Yes.
But I think this cartoon today is
boring.
pensive.
It's boring.
It's boring in the extent
The
that
only
it's not
thing
funny,
I
but
wrote
it's
in my
pensive.
notes is boring.
But the thing is, Tujet, cartoons are not always supposed to tickle us. They should also make us think.
But this did not make me think.
So it won't even go to the parking bay?
It doesn't make sense to me. A new dawn question mark, but in the background he has the sun rising, aka a new dawn. It just doesn't make sense to me.
You can put it in the bin then.
Yeah.
Okay. The
It's a star.
The star.
This is Ozone. And Ozone has Wanjiko. And I keep telling Ozone here, you must always
Give credit.
Give credit because Gado is one who came up with this Wanjiko
Although,
story.
where has he written Wanjiko?
He has not, but he has drawn.
The stylized version.
Nobody used to draw Wanjiko until Gado started doing it.
At this rate, you'll say if a woman is drawn, you have to say it's Gado's
No, it's the way in which that she's been drawn.
Okay, let's call that Chepe.
Okay.
Yeah. So this lady is walking. I think this is the revolving door.
Yeah.
And the political class is here. And I think, in my view, the political class is saying, the caption is political class only. The report is BBI. And this lady seems very bewildered. And she's being directed, go like this, please go like this. I think what Ozone is telling us is the Kenyans are normally used to be taken around in circles by politicians.
What is just saying is that they were not allowed to come into
Exactly.
the BBI
No, but they are allowed.
You're interpreting.
party.
They're actually allowed. I saw so many. That thing can handle how many people? 4,500?
But remember, there were 100 delegates from each county.
Who were invited.
47 counties, so that's 4,700 people.
Yeah, so this,
I think what Ozone is actually trying to say is that Kenyans are the average Kenyan is being left out of this BBI situation.
Precisely.
This new constitution making process, we're leaving out the people who it will impact the most.
Precisely.
Yeah, but the BBI team went around the country. I don't think they were going around the country talking to politicians. They were around the country talking to regular Kenyans. So just because they were not in an event, because delegates were invited instead, doesn't mean that
they were left out necessarily.
Process.
That one needs the bin.
That's true.
Right? Gado has caricature of selfie taking Raila Odinga and the prince himself, Uhuru Kenyatta, and they're in a pigsty. And they look, right next to them is sober, is crying, William Ruto, Kalasinga. And the pigs are named MPs and MCAs. And next to them are bundles of money. and next to that is Wanjiko seeming bewildered.
Yeah.
And that mouse Gado draws down there. Say, of course, Wanjiko, you will participate in the process of cleaning up their mess. I think this is a very apt cartoon.
A very what?
Apt.
Oh, apt.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's apt?
It's very apt because I've always argued that the size of government needs to be reduced.
Bloated.
It's too bloated.
Yeah.
We cannot have with our current revenue uptake of 1 point whatever trillion. You cannot have MPs and MCAs all nominated, 47 counties, and still say you're trying to lend a document.
Yeah, and I think also here he's talking not only about how many they are, how bloated the government is,
Yes.
but the quality of them as well, likening them to
Nature.
pigs.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to say anything about the nature of MPs, but I will say very firmly that the quality of MCAs I think is
Yes.
pig-like.
Oh my God. You see, guys. Look, there are excesses, and let's be honest.
Yeah.
Parliament has taken it's taken responsibility of awarding itself more parks, and I mean, I think that's
because
okay,
also the system has allowed.
the system has allowed
it to happen.
you know?
Yeah, and they're humans.
And just look, you have 347 MPs for goodness sake. You have 1,400 MCAs. What for?
So the cartoon is telling us that Uhuru and Raila are complicit in it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's trying to say that they are a bit aloof. They are taking selfies. The entire
In the
place
midst
has
of
flies,
murk and
dirt and greedy pigs.
I think as a cartoon itself, it's very effective, so I would vote for it.
Yeah.
As
Yes.
well.
I
Very
would want
effective.
to ask though, if we're praising the media today for having such great positive headlines,
Yes.
might I suggest that as good as this cartoon is, we toss it for negativity?
No, you can't.
No?
This is reality.
All right.
This one wins.
So what is our final thought?
And now, our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Crowds and Power by Elias Canetti. Canetti?
I love it. Canetti.
Canetti.
Yeah.
You're trying to do your Italian accent?
They cannot do a Kikuyu accent, can
Yeah.
they?
Okay. Well, yes, Crowds and Power by Elias Canetti, written in 1960. He actually isn't Italian, he's German.
Yeah, I know that.
Oh, okay.
This was translated from German.
Yes, it was. Well done.
I
Okay.
know that. You think I did not read?
Hi to him. Just checking. So he was a German writer, and he actually received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1981 for, and this is what they quoted as saying, writings marked by a broad outlook, a wealth of ideas, and artistic power.
Yes.
And the cornerstone of this prize, the Nobel Prize that he won, was actually from this very book,
Yes.
which is called An Insightful Inquiry into What Defines Crowds,
Yes.
Why We Join Them, and How They Shape the Meaning of Power.
Yeah.
So this book is notable for its very unusual tone.
Yeah.
So while it's full of a lot of lessons about crowds and power, it is not necessarily scholarly or academic in its writing. Rather, it reads like a manual written by someone outside of the human race, explaining to another outsider from the human race, in a very concise and highly metaphoric manner, how people form mobs and manipulate power. So I think you guys found as you read the book, the chapters are very short and it's very casual in its writing.
Yes.
So Canetti looks at the paradox of humans, or one of the many paradoxes of human nature, how we are so proud of our uniqueness and individuality and how we really crave personal freedom, but at the same time we seek refuge and we find ourselves very happy in a group or in a crowd.
Yes.
So
Safety in numbers.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah.
So he takes us on a journey in this book through prehistoric packs of hunter-gatherers to the emergence of global religions like Islam and Christianity, which are still crowds,
Yes.
and then on to the nation state, which is, I guess, the bigger form of a crowd.
Absolutely.
And so according to Canetti, there are 5 different types of crowds. I'll just go through them very quickly.
Yes.
So we have the baiting crowd.
Yes.
This is a crowd that has a clear objective, for example, to kill.
Yeah.
The second one is the flight crowd.
Yes.
This is formed when a group of people are faced with a common threat. But once that threat is finished, the group dissolves. Then you have the prohibition crowd, and their purpose is refusal. So you have people who strike or who go on protests.
Yes.
Then you have the reversal crowd.
Yes.
These are rebellious crowds, but their aim is to overturn existing power structures. So, for example, when slaves revolt against their master.
Yeah.
And then finally, you have the feast crowds, and their purpose is common and equal indulgence. So typically in the form of lavish food or drinks.
So this happens every weekend in Nairobi.
Exactly, when people go have their nyama choma on a Saturday. Yeah, exactly. That is what you do on a Saturday. You're part of a feasting crowd.
Yes, and
exactly.
Just me.
Just you.
You eat vegetables?
Yes, I do. Okay. So I'll just give one of the stories that he gives in the book, and it's on African kings. So he tells the story of the death of an old king in Gabon and the election for his successor. So the tribe had grown tired of their king and they wanted him to die. And die he did. So the choice was then made on who the next king would be, and it was made in private and was only to be communicated to the populace on the 7th day. And so they say that the person who the elders decided to become king, his name was Jogoni, which I found was quite... Yeah, it's quite similar. So his name was Jogoni. So he was elected. The choice fell upon him in part because he came from a good family. But he did not have the slightest suspicion of this elevation, of him becoming the new king. And so as he's walking through the town one day, he's proceeded into a ceremony which is preliminary to him being crowned. But the way that it happens is that it is to deter only the most ambitious, to ensure that only the most ambitious men become king. So he says in the book that they surrounded him in a dense crowd and they began to heap upon him every manner of abuse. Some spat in his face, some beat him with their fists, some kicked him, threw disgusting objects at him, and every moment they would continue to do this and to put him through this very harsh situation. But they say Jogoni bore himself like a man and a prospective king. He kept his temper and took all abuse with a smiling face. And so eventually they take him into the castle and they're about to crown him. They all became silent and the elders rose and said, "Now we choose you for our king. We engage to listen to you and obey to you." He was then dressed in a red gown and received the greatest marks of respect from all of those people who had just previously disrespected him. And he says in this book that you have two of these marks of the crowds. You have the first one, the baiting crowd, but then you also have the second, the reversal. But what Jogoni had to realize in this moment is that it was just transferred anger. The community was having to transfer the anger they had for the old king to then give it to him in order for him to become the new king. And he said that what Jogoni was experiencing was that the new regime was starting with the situation that every king fears the most. That of being surrounded by rebellious subjects closing in on him. So you have this juxtaposition of the crowds imposing a person who's about to become the owner of power.
Absolutely. My takeaway from this book, guys, is what he calls the fear of being touched. And guys, there is nothing that a man or a woman, for that matter, fears than being touched by the unknown. So when you're sleeping and then
physically touched.
Yes. And can you imagine you're sleeping and you're staying alone in the house and someone creeps in and just doesn't steal from you, just touches you.
Instant prayer.
It is instant prayer, right? But you know what? That fear goes when you, even on the street when someone nudges you and that kind of thing, you look at them badly. Or can you look where you're going? But in a crowd, you lose that fear. In fact, you get used to being touched and being bumped around.
He says you become one with the crowd.
You become one with the crowd. It's like you equalize, right? Because have you ever had one person shouting "Bado mapambano" or "Haki yetu"? It never happened, all right? But it always happens in a crowd, right? But also my second takeaway from these guys is the origins of power. And he says just like the origins of crowds were like a pack, the origins of power can be found in the acts of seizing, killing and eating actions, right? And they're symbolized by very simple things that used to happen even during the days of the first human, and that is by the hands and by the fingers and by the mouth. Now, the first act is to grip, right, and is to seize. It says the first act is to seize. The hands tight grip on the hands tight grip on an object is characteristic of power. So that's why you say we have seized power, and you say is a tight grip on power. And the West likes using that on dictators, African dictators. Second is fingers, right? We eat with our fingers, but there's this thing we call the index finger. We use it to point, but we also have 5 fingers which we can clench, and the clench is also a sign of power because it's a fist and it's a position of attack, right? But you can also strangle people with your fingers. So you grab someone and you shika them, and you strangle them.
Why do you have a bit of a smile on your face?
You think I've done it before?
I'm not saying anything.
I will tell you why later in a quote. Why he's smiling.
Yes, but also the hands can also be equated to the paws of a lion or to the paws of a tiger as well. And these are also symbols of power all the way from time immemorial. And the last but not least symbol of power are the teeth. Now, what do we do with the teeth? We consume our prey, and it's largely meat. Now, the canines, if you see even our coat of arms, what is there? It's a lion.
It's a lion.
Lions are symbols of power.
Yep.
Have you ever seen a goat anywhere in a goat coat of arms? And let me tell you, it's not just about the teeth, it is also what the teeth eat. So if they eat meat, then there is also a thing of power, because, for example, Moi was known as a lion of Baringo, for example, because he eats
He
meat.
was carnivorous.
Yes, but nobody is seen powerful if they eat maize or cabbage, because it's
Vegetables
it's a
make you
vegetable.
strong. Don't get it twisted.
You know, it's very interesting how Kaneti
Kaneti.
gives symbols. He gives symbols of power, but then he also really explains it very concisely.
Absolutely, yes.
He says, what is power?
Yeah.
At its most basic, it's the threat of force.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
physical force is only an act in the here and now.
Yes.
And power goes beyond the limit of time.
Yes.
It's about the extension of force through space and time. But then he also tells us that in a crowd,
Yes.
we are equal.
Yes.
There
Yeah.
is no power in a crowd.
Absolutely.
One is like the other. We become
Yes.
one in the crowd.
Yes.
So who ends up being an equal and has power over the crowd?
Yeah.
He says many things,
Yeah.
but I'll mention two.
Yeah.
One, he says, is who practices secrecy.
Yes.
And he says secrecy actually lies at the core of power.
Oh, yes.
Prof usually says that
Mystic.
the word government,
Yes.
sirikali, in
Sirikali.
Swahili actually means secret,
Absolutely.
top secret.
Yes.
He says, even in the animal kingdom, in this book, he says, it is true, the act of lying in wait, this lion that you're talking about,
Yes.
lying in wait for the prey is an act of secrecy in
Yeah.
itself
Yes.
and gives power
Yes.
over the prey.
Yes.
So, the other thing he says, so the one who has power
Yeah.
is the one who seems to know more than what the crowd
It
knows,
knows.
and usually by not saying much. So
Yes.
when there's an air of mystique and
Yes.
secrecy,
Yes.
then one has power over the crowd.
Absolutely.
The other thing he says is one who practices judgment
Yes.
and condemnation.
Yes.
The act of judgment consists of relegating something inferior to an inferior group,
Yeah.
while presupposing a higher group
Yeah.
to yourself
Yeah.
and to other people
Yeah.
where now you belong.
Yes.
So it's a subliminal elevation.
Yes.
And he says that this in itself can be what the person of power uses to shape the crowd. He's told us that there's 5 different types of crowd.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can use my judgment and condemnation to turn this crowd into, for instance, a baiting crowd.
Yeah.
Yes.
A crowd that is baying for the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, for
yeah.
instance, or a revolutionary crowd, which
Yes.
he calls the reversal crowd,
Yeah.
that wants to change the status quo.
Yes.
And so, using my power in judgment and condemnation, and it's really a power in terms of messaging and the confidence in messaging.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, very interesting book on crowds
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
very true.
interesting.
and power and the intersection between the two.
Do you think this guy has a secret that we don't know about? Is he holding some power somewhere?
He probably does.
Perhaps the three of
The
them.
three of them.
do
Or maybe the
separately.
I suspect it's just two of them.
Two of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Standard gives us our winning headline and our winning cartoon. We have a double winning.
Yeah.
So I will end with this. A murder
Yeah.
or any bad act shared with many others, which is not only safe but also permitted
Yes.
and indeed recommended, is irresistible to a great majority of men and women.
Whoa.
That is why he was smiling earlier, because of the safety of crowds in doing something
We wouldn't
bad.
judge you.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're also on your TV screens on GoTV and Pang Free to Air and Star Times.
Yes.
Have a good night. See you tomorrow.
Bless.